new episode of the Beirut Banyan, and we're joined today by Tarek Mitri, a former Minister of Environment, Information, Culture, as well as an acting foreign minister during the July 2006 war with Israel, and the most recent director of the Issam Fares Institute at AUB. And today is Tarek Mitri's last day in that capacity. And this recording took place just days before the uprising unfolded. And what we discuss, in particular about Tripoli, is timely. Tarek Mitri takes us back to a Tripoli that he grew up in the 1950s, the politics of that era, what persuaded him personally, his appreciation for Arabic literature, for theology, for philosophy, and a colorful blend of Christian-Muslim dialogue, as well as genuine attempts at state reform. His career really defines the challenges of reforming the Lebanese Republic following the end of the Civil War, and the power-sharing model that is currently being challenged on the streets of Beirut and throughout Lebanon. And as he's stepping down today as a director of the Issam Fares Institute, I thought it was appropriate to release the episode. And again, the conversation was recorded just before the uprising, but I think all that we discuss matters more today. Before we get to Tarek Mitri's episode, if you're enjoying this podcast and the episodes released these past 2 weeks, please consider a contribution through Patreon. The link is in the details box below, or visit the website, beirutbanyan.com. Simply click on the Patreon button, a completely independent endeavor, and I'm doing my best to capture every moment of this uprising day by day. Any donation, any pledge is appreciated. I'm Rani Shatah for episode 26 of the Beirut Banyan with Tarek Mitri.
Tripoli was a city where you had a sense of history. It's an Arab Islamic city. It has its architectural specificity. It's a bit conservative, socially conservative, but at the same time, it's cosmopolitan. It was cosmopolitan and very open to the world, partly because IPC was not far from the city.
Iraqi petroleum
Petroleum Company. Yeah. There were lots of Greeks, Italians, you name it, Brits and French and who lived in the city, and then Lebanese and Palestinians from various regions of Lebanon and Palestine.
But maybe this is actually more relevant because, if anything, Tripoli, a big city for Lebanese standards, has changed much more than Beirut.
Oh, yeah.
And was affected perhaps less by the Civil War at the same time. So you're going back to a time where Tripoli was the, if you will, the closest example of a melting pot or a diverse groupings of people. And you grew up in which neighborhood in Tripoli?
Indeed. I grew up in Sharia Azmi.
Yeah.
In what has become later Sharia Thaqafi.
So you're in the heart of Tripoli.
Yeah. So and the city was modern.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of, it's both conservative and modern.
Mm-hmm.
It was also a city that welcomed Lebanese from other parts of the north.
Right.
And who mostly came from Christian backgrounds. So it was almost, in terms of those who resided in the city, it was half Christian, half Muslim.
Right.
Which again gave it a special flavor.
You're saying conservative and modern at the same time, but as a Christian Lebanese growing up in a city that you call home, which is yours, did you ever feel that tension affected you as a child in Tripoli?
Never, actually.
So there was no anticipation that this would break down and fall apart? No. Okay.
Whatsoever. Quite the contrary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we felt that that the city sort of prefigured what other parts of Lebanon
Yeah.
will develop into, you know.
Yeah. Tripoli was worth celebrating.
Oh, absolutely, in every sense. Now,
My father grew up on the same street, Shara Azmi.
yeah, I'm pleased to hear that Muhammad lived in Shara Azmi. I'm older than him, so and I went to French-speaking school while he had his schooling in an American institution.
Right. Yeah.
So our path did not cross at that time.
Right.
But we made up for that later.
Yes, exactly.
So now I was, I lived in two worlds, and now in retrospect, I think one could have, maybe I tried to make the best of those two worlds. I was in a city which was Arab and Islamic, and I was fully immersed. I was very Arabi,
yes,
and Urubi. I demonstrated in support of the Algerian Revolution. I was pro-Palestinian since I was 15 years old, and I loved Arabic. And I spoke with an accent that many people thought I was a Muslim Tripolitan, while I was Christian. So this was one world in which I lived, and then the world of the school, which was very different. It was predominantly Christian. We spoke French.
Yeah.
We were not allowed to speak Arabic. We were
at school. There was.
Yeah, we were
really.
We were sanctioned if we spoke Arabic.
Wow.
It was like a little crime. We should not be code speaking Arabic.
Students among themselves, were they speaking
We
dialect?
had to. No, we had to speak French to each other.
So students among, in let's say social settings, was it still French?
No, in social settings, no, Arabic, or you mix the two.
Right.
But in school,
French.
the lingua franca is French.
Yeah.
You had to speak French. And many of our teachers, I mean, all our teachers were Christian. Many were Europeans.
Yeah.
The Christian brothers, the monks, were French, Czech, Italian, you name it, but they came from Europe. So it was another world.
Right.
Yeah.
Did that have any reason? Was there any reaction to that, which took you towards Arabic literature and appreciation for?
Maybe, yeah. Now I have to say that we've always had in that school good Arabic teachers. But it has to do more with my father, who at one point realized that my French was better than my Arabic. And he was a bit upset, you know. He said, "La, you have to work on your Arabic. This is our language. This is where we come from." And so I think my father had a role in orienting me towards
The Orient.
Reorienting, affirming my Arab identity. You know, we used to study the history of France. Whether this was the original intention of the missionaries that taught us in that school or not doesn't matter. But some of them were good intentioned. I have no doubt about this.
Yeah.
They were not there to convert us, nor to Roman Catholicism, nor they were there to inculturate us in French tradition. But that's probably not their intention. But the fact of the matter is that we studied the history of France. We, of course, spoke French. We were made to believe that there is a society that we need to emulate, that we come from.
But it's your father's generation who's, in a way, maybe better suited to see the change happen. Because I'm guessing he grew up at the height of the French Mandate.
And he went to the same school where I
Same school.
have been.
And it must have been his father who only spoke Arabic, and there were no French offered. And then your generation is the shift, which maybe if we want to get a little, sort of unpack the word modern, maybe that's at the end of the day what we are talking about, which is there's a letting go of our past to a point, and embracing, could be American cinema, in the movies, in the theaters of Tripoli, or the French language, or even maybe and disinterest in the Arabic language itself, and adapting to something new.
Yeah.
But he saw you as, he was careful to make sure you appreciated both.
He kept telling me, these are our roots, this is our identity, احنا Arab, you know.
Yeah.
He never missed reminding me of this. So,
Did this strength and making sure you preserved your Arabic and your history, when you were a teenager in Tripoli, and maybe more aware, more observant of what was happening around Lebanon, was there any internal problem there where you're like, yes, we are Arab, and yes, there's an Islamic story here, but there's a part of Lebanon that is maybe embracing something else and sees things differently? Did you ever have any issue with that personally?
yes. There are so many things I disliked in not just in my in the micro society of my school. And many of my peers were they were not fanatic Christians, but they were a bit apprehensive of Muslims. You know? And again, looked down at Arabs and Muslims as, you know, it was a time where the ideology of progress sort of was predominant, and that we wanted to progress, therefore we needed to emulate Western countries.
Yeah.
That was a point of disagreement and difference that I cultivated actually with my fellow classmates.
So you felt as an outsider of sorts?
Yeah, but at the same time, I never felt as an outsider. So
Right. So you were really able to
managed to live in two worlds. This is what I wanted to say in the beginning. I thought there is a best of two worlds one could bring together.
Yeah.
Of course, there are tensions. You can't hold two identities together without tension. But it's a struggle. But we were too young to understand what we were doing.
But it's almost every story I hear of those years, especially your generation, is one of a city worth celebrating and a city worth returning to. And I mean, in a softer way, a competition with Beirut, because you could stay in Tripoli, have a great time in Tripoli, live a prosperous life, and you didn't need to come to Beirut.
Yeah, I had to come to Beirut for university studies. There were no universities in Tripoli.
But I mean, as a youth, as an adolescent,
we were very happy.
Yeah.
Probably, and proud. Remember, we were a bunch of students from Tripoli.
Yeah.
We were living in the dormitories. And
so even when you left, you still felt like ours is better in a sense. Yeah.
And I remember one of my closest friends. We were roommates for years and close friends. he used to speak with a heavy accent, troubles,
Troublesome accent.
very
Yeah,
heavy. And mine was a little more sort of tempered accent. And I remember the Beirutis, whenever Ghassan, his name is, whenever Ghassan spoke, the Beirutis smiled, and then he used to tell me, "Well, they're smiling. Is it? They don't like my accent."
You're translating something.
And he used, so it took us some time, those of us who came from Tripoli, to sort of integrate in Ras Beirut. Now, Ras Beirut was also a very welcoming
And that's actually a good point to transition because
part of the city.
Yeah, Ras Beirut, if anything, is similar to what you're describing in your youth in Tripoli, a natural mixing of communities where it's an equal among equals. There's no,
And so was AUB actually.
In AUB.
AUB was very cosmopolitan at that time.
Yeah.
We had lots of Arab students from various nationalities. There were Asians, remember Afghanis and Pakistanis and Indians. There were lots of Americans. So it was, you had the whole world at AUB, you know, and where you came from or what religious community you belonged to did not really matter. I mean, we were divided on political issues, so the divide was political. It was never.
So this is late 60s, early 70s?
This is late 60s, early 70s.
And there, the tension is real on campus.
Oh yes, because of mostly the rise of the Palestinian resistance. There were those of us who were supportive of the Palestinian resistance movements. And we were Lebanese and people from other nationalities. We were also influenced by this wave of student struggle for change that was a world phenomenon, 1968, 69, 70.
But I'm curious about you, coming from Tripoli, entering AUB, and then finding yourself, in a way, making a decision where you stand politically. Did you formulate these views at a younger age in Tripoli and sort of carry them with you? Or is it something that happened here?
No, I was predisposed.
Predisposed, okay. But
in Tripoli, I was already, I used to, when I was a kid, from 15, 16 years old, I remember I was in a demonstration in support of the Algerian National Liberation Movement. I used to walk in demonstrations where we praised Nasser.
Okay.
And
so the Arab nationalist Palestinian.
And then when the Palestinian resistance movement, the Fidaiyin, as we used to call them in the late 60s or mid 60s, surfaced. We admired them and were very supportive. At that time, even in school, though the Christian brothers sort of wanted to isolate us as much as they could from the city. We were the school was supposed to be our alternative world, alternative society.
But you
even extracurricular and everything.
Yeah.
The school wanted to sort of shield us from the influence of the political movements that were popular in this city.
And you found yourself drawn.
And I found myself, rather than accept to cut myself off from the city, I moved towards greater integration in the life of the city.
Right.
Yeah. So I was prepared to make those options that I made when I came to AUB.
So you were, in a sense, a well-aware teenager, politically speaking. You were not coming as an amateur with a fresh sort of slate. You had enough opinions formulated, at least to...
I mean, there were... we were not very sophisticated at that time. We were young people.
Sure,
I mean,
of course.
We knew what we liked and what we disliked.
But the reason the reason I'm probing a bit on this is because that is the turning point in our history. That there was a youthful yearning on both sides of the spectrum, which would eventually cater. It would help drive the country apart later. But at the same time, you are growing up on Shara Azmi, middle of Tripoli, and on sectarian terms, unfortunately, you're a Christian from Tripoli who supports the Palestinian cause, and you're a Christian in Ras Beirut, and no one would think twice about it. It's like, so what? He is a pro-Palestinian. The religious stuff takes a backseat. And my uncle, my father's side, who we were talking about before, is a Sunni Muslim from Shara Azmi, same street, a Kataib sympathizer, a phalangist supporter, and then finds himself on the other side of the spectrum in Ras Beirut, the same years. And I think that's the magic that we lost to a degree. You could come to this part of Beirut, and your religion, your sect, your confession was not the identifying factor. And that, I think, is my generation has unfortunately, we lost that, where now the sect does unfortunately take a front row seat. And I always like reflecting on those years because that's the charm, that other things matter more than where you come from or what your last name is and that stuff.
There are all kinds of theories. I mean, about this, and Christians contributed to the Arab Renaissance movement, to the independence movement, and many historians of Arab nationalism, when they refer to the contribution made by Christians and other minorities, they say that their role outweighed by far their numerical importance. I mean, there were many more Christians in the leadership of the Arab nationalist movement than there were Christians in the country, proportionally. And then if you go further in trying to analyze the reason why this is so, you have those who thought that this is another form of an attempt to shake loose your minority identity. Right. I mean, you're a minority, but you don't want to be a minority. Right. Therefore, you want to espouse a greater cause that you want to emphasize what binds people together across religious differences. You want to dilute your original religious identity. True or not, the fact of the matter is that there were many Christians. I mean, I never felt alone we were quite a few Christians who thought that this was our place. Now, perhaps what plays also is in favor of that, that's not a major determinant, but was that Tripoli, no matter how great is the city, and it's the second capital of Lebanon, as we used to say, عاصمة لبنان الثانية. But Tripoli is periphery. It's
back then.
It's Lebanon is Mount Lebanon, and the rest of us have been sort of joined Lebanon in 1920,
Yeah.
Before that, we were Ottomans. We
Right.
were not part of Mount Lebanon.
Right.
So there were first-class Lebanese, the Beirutis, and the people from Mount Lebanon, and we were kind of second-class Lebanese. There was a bit of that.
You felt that yourself
Yeah, we felt that those who control Lebanon politically, culturally, and economically, we're not part of those.
Interesting.
Even if we're Christians.
Right.
Well, I'm not Maronite either, so that again within the Christian community, being an Orthodox makes you sometimes feel like you're kind of, in the eyes of those people, you're a second-class Christian.
In the eyes of
the ruling class,
which would be more the Beirut merchant families,
and Mount Lebanon,
and the Maronite families of the mountain.
All families.
And you felt it as a student that you're coming. I mean, it's not actual second-class citizen, obviously.
No,
but you felt
it's an overstated word.
But you felt disadvantaged.
Felt a little disadvantaged. Yeah, we felt that there were the Beirutis and people from Mount Lebanon, Christians, who have a greater sense of entitlement that we did not have.
Right.
We came from the periphery, peripheral.
But it's still it's interesting because it's not sectarian. You're not looking at Beirutis and saying those Sunnis.
No.
You're saying the coast and the mountain.
No.
And we want in. We want to join the club. It's almost like it almost speaks more of economic disadvantage than anything.
Yeah, you had two options. Either you just think of AUB as a place where that gives you the chance of an upward social mobility, and that with it you identify with the ruling elite of Lebanon.
Right.
You had that option.
Yeah.
And many people from Tripoli, largely Christians but also Muslims,
felt that it was the path.
that was the path to follow.
Yeah.
And there were those of us who felt that no, this Lebanon needs to change, and Lebanon's Arab identity has to be affirmed. The Palestinians are going to change the region.
I wonder if these are all the components necessary for a career in Christian Muslim understanding. Because I think you have to have both sides and be able to see them on the same footing to then make that into a career where you're able to fully absorb.
Probably. Now, to add a complicating factor, at the risk of surprising you, I was a practicing Christian.
Okay.
I used to go to church.
Yeah.
And read the Bible, and at that time, there was a movement in worldwide, the Christian movement, some thought that developed that was depicted as a theology of liberation. It started in Latin America, developed in Europe and even North America, and here there were a number of young Christians who were like me, committed Christians who went to church, read the Bible, and what have you, and who were sensitive to the ideals of social justice and therefore receptive to the ideas of the left, wanted to be in solidarity with the poor, with the downtrodden.
So it's really, your politics were not just Middle Eastern, they were universal.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. So we had this sense of solidarity with the oppressed, that as Christians we needed to live.
I mean, it's a very different time. So you have the Cold War, And you have, I mean, you're referencing things, I'm guessing, reaching South America, and you're sort of tuned in. When you reach AUB, is it that the Palestinian cause just simply fits into that framework? Or was it really an individual choice on your part that no, this is the right cause and this is something worth championing?
It's both, actually.
Both, okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
all of us Arabs were sensitive to the loss of Palestine in 1948, the sense of injustice inflicted on the Palestinian people. That's very clear.
Yeah.
And we were proud Arabs when we heard about the first military guerrilla warfare against the Israelis. We were kind of proud that this is the beginning of an Arab awakening. You know, we've been defeated for so many years by the Israelis.
Yes, yes.
And now that these young people are.
But as you're a religious student.
But then there's something universal in the Palestinian cause.
Right, right.
That was equally attractive to someone like me. And at that time, it was the beginning of a worldwide solidarity movement with the Palestinians.
Right.
So, the Palestinian national movement had affinities with leftist groups in Japan, in Latin America, in Western Europe.
Yeah.
And all of this we saw at AUB. I mean, there were students from all these countries and who had been to Palestinian camps and were supportive of the Palestinian cause.
It almost sounds seductive as a student being able to identify with the world or with segments throughout the world on an issue. But again, I know you're a teenager, you're turning in your early 20s. Did you ever sense that this here would spill into something horrible for Lebanon? I don't mean that there's no burden on you here.
No, I know. But I think we were there was a measure of denial on our part.
Yeah.
And now, in retrospect, I think we should have listened more to the Christians.
That's funny. I like that from you.
That were on the other side.
Right.
Whose politics was largely influenced by fear.
Yeah.
They fear that the Palestinians will destabilize Lebanon.
Yeah.
They fear that the Arabs will dominate Lebanon and Lebanon will lose its specificity, its unique character.
Yeah.
And they feared that at the level of AUB, the fact that there are so many Arab and international students that are politically militant, they fear them. And so there was something reactive, I would even say defensive, on the part of the Lebanese League of Students that Hassan Shatah was a member of, that brought together, Kataib and their allies, and with whom we, not only we fought politically, but even physically. There were many instances where students, I wasn't personally involved in violence in any of that, but that was frequent.
There's even a book written about campus at war. I think it's Makram
Rabah
who wrote it.
So, but now in retrospect, I understand that these people were saw what we did not see or did not want to see. That Lebanon was at risk.
And you're on campus when the war begins? Or he'd already graduated at that point?
In 75, I had graduated. I had started my MA
at AUB.
At AUB.
Okay.
But I used to take, I used to go slowly at it. Used to take a course every semester or so.
Were you ever unable to come to Beirut during those years because of Tripoli being
No, just it was, unfortunately, it was the opposite. I was in Beirut, and it was difficult to get to Tripoli.
Go back to Tripoli.
Yeah.
My father started his master's as well,
Yeah.
and he got stuck in Tripoli. So that was the other way around.
No, I was here, but I wanted to go and see my parents, and it was not very easy. There were times where I had to wait 2-3 months before
Right.
I'm able to go to Tripoli.
Is there anything in those years that made you see yourself as becoming in a way, a representative of the state, or working to fix the state?
No.
No.
No, I saw myself at that time I thought what now we call a civil war in the early few years, say from 75 to 82,
Yeah.
roughly speaking.
Yeah.
That period, we still thought that that Lebanon was changing, and then we might get rid of the political system as it was, dominated by
The old model.
the old parties and
Yeah.
elite, and so there is hope
So there
for
was
a
hope.
new Lebanon,
Right.
and then we were, at least as far as I'm concerned, I was more interested in that Lebanon in the making than in the existing state. And we felt that this is going to fall apart, and then out of its ashes, a new
Something.
reality. We had this illusion. I think we got disillusioned in 1982
Yeah.
after the Israeli invasion.
Right.
We lost the Palestinians; they were not here anymore, and the Palestinians were the military force that made
Yeah.
the politics of change possible.
Yeah.
And then Bashir Gemayel was elected, and then before he got killed. But at that time, we felt that that was the end of it. That was the end of our dream for a new Lebanon. And
Your personal pursuits would then take you, in a sense, away from that. Towards...
and then I decided to sort of move away from politics after 82.
And you were still going back and forth even then.
Yeah.
Is it after the war that you ended up moving?
Yeah, we left after the war.
After the war, and you went to Switzerland.
Yeah.
In those years, that's where your academic and your Christian-Muslim understanding dialogue sort of takes shape, and you're well established there. When the Syrians entered in the 90s and they were here, did you sense that there was any room for hope at a time where the war had ended, but things were obviously not moving in the right direction? Did you see any hope then that things would improve? Forget the economic rebirth, forget, all the stuff, the money coming back, but the political situation, did you ever see that changing?
No.
None.
I had very little hope. Actually.
Yeah.
I had very little hope. But I was interested in, by that time I had become, as you said, fully immersed in things, Christian, Muslim, in dialogue, in dealing with conflicts in places like Bosnia, Sudan, Ireland, Chechnya, you name it. So I used to look at Lebanon from that angle. That is, this is a country that is coming out of a war that has divided Christians and Muslims. Now, what is it we need to do to remake a Lebanon a place where Christians and Muslims not only can live in peace, but can
survive,
can develop a common identity, and then.
But there was no longer.
So that was my primary interest.
Yeah.
I had no interest in Lebanese politics.
No interest.
No, I mean very limited interest in Lebanese politics, and the heavy-handed Syrian presence make it even more difficult for someone who lives in Geneva, comes every other month to Lebanon to be active in politics. So I wasn't. I was politically inactive.
Inactive.
I was only interested in sort of bringing Christians and Muslims into conversation about their future together, about the misuse of religion in driving people apart. I mean, these were the issues.
So politics is part of the conversation, but it's not the conversation.
It's a dimension of
It's a
the
dimension.
conversation.
But then, of course, everything changes, because in February 2005, Rafiq Hariri's assassination, shortly thereafter, you're a minister in the Lebanese government.
It was, by chance that this happened to me. Actually, I was about to go to Harvard. I had an offer to teach for 5 years.
Really?
At Harvard, because I had taught a year earlier.
But it's fascinating, I think, because you come back quickly, and suddenly you're a representative of the Lebanese government. And this is now 15 years after the war ended. You are visible, you're on the stage. A year later, you're representing Lebanon on the world stage. And that, I think, is really by chance. It's by chance that you come back, but it's by chance that you're the acting foreign minister in a time where Lebanon is on the news in every corner of the world.
That's a more complicated story.
But to me, I remember, of course, being here late at night, whenever there was electricity, international news, and you are there, Security Council, representing Lebanon and doing your best. And I think, subjective view, you're under attack from every side possible, let alone the Israelis across the table, Dan Gillerman, if I remember correctly. So I watched you, in a way, doing everything possible to make the case that this war will only bring permanent damage to Lebanon. There's not going to be a winner or loser here. The state will lose. What you're representing will lose. And I deeply admired that stretch, because you're a reluctant politician. And now you're the face of Lebanon.
What happened is, I can tell you, forget about details, but it's an interesting story, because after the stint with Najib Miati, and we had elections and so on, and the coalition, 14th of March, won. Then Senora was asked to form the cabinet, and then Senora wanted to call me. We knew each other since times immemorial, since 1970s, early 70s. So Fuad called me and said, I want you to join me and you'll be my foreign minister, because you have a good international experience, you've traveled the world, and this kind.
So that was the initial intention. Foreign
that
minister.
was the initial intention. So foreign minister, but then he went to Lahoud, and Lahoud said, yes, well, Tarek, it's good. Lahoud did not know me. That's the good thing. Had he known me, he would have not accepted.
That's funny.
So
you're really there by accident.
I looked, like a decent guy, and in my community, because in Lebanon this is essential, that my community is fully supportive. Fuad Boutros Hassan Touaini, the bishop. That's it. So you can't find a better Orthodox. So everybody was happy. But then Hezbollah said, no, we want, as they shared, the major 4 ministerial positions, they wanted the foreign ministry for the Shiites. And the Orthodox got the defense ministry. I was not candidate. You get the 4 Sunni Shiite, Orthodox and Maronite, they have the 4 more senior cabinet position.
But you did not want that. You were.
So I said to Fuad, it didn't work, okay, I'm going back to Geneva. He said, no, you stay, you'll be minister of something.
Okay.
So he got me appointed Minister of Culture. And what he did that was smart on his behalf, you know, after you form a cabinet, then every minister is appointed. There is a decree.
Yes. Yeah.
Interim ad interim minister of another portfolio.
Yeah.
So in case your colleague is away, you step in and
So you.
and be the acting minister.
And it's just by chance that the summer war, the July war, you were the acting foreign minister.
Yeah, now there is a story to this, but I will. So Fuad appointed me already
Yeah.
acting foreign minister. So
Yeah.
when the foreign minister, because foreign minister travels a lot,
Yeah.
so when he's away, I replace him as sort of proxy for him.
Yeah.
Which has happened for a few months and so on. And then the 2016,
2006.
2006 war broke in July, and we were, the three of us were the closest to Fuad Senora, that time Muhammad, myself, and Nawaf Salam.
Okay.
And we worked, the three of us, I still have the drafts, you know, on the so-called 7 points plan.
Oh, wow.
And then we flew with Fuad to Rome.
Yes.
Where
Yes.
there was a conference in
Yeah.
Rome. And then as we were coming back on the plane, Fuad said, would you be prepared to go to New York? And I said, yes, but look, I'm Minister of Culture. Right? You can't send a Minister of Culture to represent Lebanon in those negotiations.
Right.
He said, don't worry, I will find a way. And then, and I said to him, well, fine, if you find a way, but I need a unanimous decision by the Council of Ministers, because I want to, if I want to do good work in New York,
You want everyone on board.
I want everyone on board. I don't want to be perceived as a divisive person.
Sure.
I want support. He said, don't worry, I will talk to Lahoud, to the president. He talked to Lahoud. The president said, yeah, fine. Let him go. And then you needed the Council of Ministers to approve that. So what they did was a trick in a way. We had an invitation to go to the Organization of Islamic Conference meeting in Kuala Lumpur. So they said, this is a very important conference, and then the foreign minister needs to go to Kuala Lumpur.
Yeah.
So the foreign minister, who loves to travel,
Yeah.
said, okay, I go to Kuala Lumpur. The moment he was sent to Kuala Lumpur, I've become the foreign minister, because I am I am the interim.
This is months before the summer war. So this is really.
This is after the summer war.
Sorry, this is after the summer
a
war.
week after the war had started.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, I misunderstood. So this is already you're filling the role during the war.
Yeah, during the war.
But I just curious, were you, that these meetings you attended and all that attention your way, was there any moment you thought that, what am I doing here? I am here really by chance, and I never signed up for this, and now I am taking on a big responsibility.
No, I didn't say this. I said, no, this is my duty. I have to do it the best way I can. No,
but I think that's the definition of technocrat, or whatever you want to call it, a politician who does the job. You're not fighting for your political survival.
No, I was not interested in my own career.
No.
There was not. I was Minister of Culture. I was happy
Exactly.
with museums and arts and.
So you are, in a way, the kind of politician Lebanon lacks throughout history.
But you know what?
A state representative doing their job.
You know what? What helped you, which is something I always say to my students when I teach, a course on diplomacy or something like this. I always tell them the most important thing is to have clarity on your objective. What are you trying to achieve? And don't let yourself be derailed, distracted from this.
Yeah.
For me, the main objective was Lebanon was perceived worldwide as an aggressor because of Hezbollah crossed the blue line and did their they kidnapped the Israeli soldiers. And my job, I thought, was to convince the international community, for whatever that word means, that Lebanon is not an aggressor but a victim.
Yeah.
Wanted to restore the image of Lebanon as a victim.
Restore the sovereign image of
And
Lebanon.
again, the sovereign image of Lebanon and so on. And all of that, all of these are implications.
Sure.
So I focused on that, and as I did the work I was supposed to do in New York.
The months thereafter, the special tribunal is formed, and then you have a lot of things changing in Lebanon. This, of course, you're Minister of Interior under two different governments, so you may hold the record. I'm not sure about this, of the most portfolios for the Lebanese government by one person, maybe. Although I'm not sure. I'll double check on that. You have experienced many facets of the Lebanese state, and then you are here in Lebanon. You're serving as a minister, but you're seeing the gradual erosion of the state. And that would later bring you back to academia, which is your career at Issam Fares. But in those years, and I know this is a good decade of perspective, did you ever imagine that Lebanon would end up where it is today? Because now it is quite pessimistic. And things are really bad. But 10 years ago, following the July War, 2007, 2008, up until 2009, really, when things seemed to be like they were going to be stable for a time being, did you ever imagine that all of this would take place? Let alone the Arab Spring, let alone the Syrian War, let alone all of the regional turmoil, that we would be where we are right now.
None of us predicted or was capable of foreseeing the deterioration of our economy to what it has reached now. This, I speak not just for myself, but for everybody I worked with. This is something we did not foresee. And although the premises of this were there, but again, I was in government from 2005 till 2011. During those 6 years, economic growth was like 8%, 9%. So this has kind of misled us. We thought that Lebanon is doing fine,
Given
of
the
course,
circumstances.
we have an internal debt. We have, but economy is
at least manageable.
Good. There's growth.
Right.
Remittances are growing. The balance of payment was positive.
Yes.
At least you have two major economic indicators that were quite assuring. Balance of payment and growth.
And it's important to know
8%.
this is during a very difficult chapter as well. It's not
Exactly.
stability or
So we said, "Khalas, alhamdulillah." We didn't foresee the collapse of our economy.
How about the political collapse of the
Now,
country?
politically, I can speak for myself, but also I think others. We soon, by I think September 2006, that's 3 months after the war, September, October, or November, when Hezbollah and his allies,
The permanent sit-in and the...
started what I now call a vetocracy, the rule by veto. And when And we also realized that our political system has become, in many ways, dysfunctional.
So you had that already in your, that was understood.
Yeah, but we kept saying, Taif agreement, we
Yeah.
have to abide by the constitution.
Yeah,
We kept talking the same old talk,
right.
but deep down we knew that the political system is being changed de facto.
Yeah.
There's a de facto change.
Yeah,
We have a constitution, but no one really cares about what is in the constitution.
yeah,
And the country is divided, and the chance of healing that division are minimal.
You held on for about 5 years after that as a representative, as a minister. And I know we're time pressed a bit. I just wanted to ask you if those are the years, I think, where your friendship, your professional relationship and your friendship with my father sort of takes hold. There's a lot of the political story that I know. Of course, I watch it on TV like anyone. I want to maybe ask you if there is a candid moment or a private moment you had with him that maybe elaborates on those years. Because I like what you just said. In September 2006, there's a digestion that things had changed and that this is really going to be just managing for the time being, but there was no optimism anymore. Was there ever a moment with him where you both sort of saw that together, or something you shared together that maybe people don't know necessarily, or I don't know, or something that you would be happy to share? Because I look for these private moments and I enjoy hearing them.
Sure.
Censored, of course.
We had lots of conversations together, and we made many trips to New York, to Cairo, and I always sensed, notwithstanding Mohammed's how should I put it? I'm not going to use the words optimism and pessimism. Notwithstanding Mohammed's determination. Let me put it this way. Notwithstanding his determination, I think we shared our skepticism as to our ability, not just the two of us, but
Sure.
but Fuad Senora, our ability to I'm going to use a big word, to save Lebanon, the Republic.
Yeah.
We saw that the Republic was falling apart,
Yeah.
that the political system is changing,
Yeah.
and Muhammad used to use a very good metaphor. He said, Lebanon is like, political life in Lebanon is like a football match where the rules of the game change as players are playing, And then if you're a referee, now what do you do? And in fact, the rules of the Lebanese political game were changing by the day.
And this is while both of you are in government.
Yeah.
So your own careers have to adjust accordingly, and it's not.
And I think when Mohammed was made minister, he hesitated a lot. We had a conversation, and then I sensed that he didn't believe much in the power of government to get things changed.
I know that for a fact. I know that he did not want to be Minister of Finance. And I know that he was relieved when that tenure was up. And I know that he thought his talents were not there, they're elsewhere. And he eventually would find himself I think in his prime, doing his best to advise. And
But
maybe
at the
steer.
same time, one of the memories I cherish is we used to have Sunday meetings at Senoras. The three of us plus a couple of people, but the three of us were regular. And then what I liked most in Muhammad, and I always had discussions with him about this, where do you get the energy from to do this? While we both agreed that our political system is hopeless, that it's becoming dysfunctional for the reasons because there are no norms, the rules are changed, and that there is this, vetocracy where every strong political grouping can, by the sheer right to veto, can paralyze the state. Although we shared this perception of Lebanese politics and of Lebanese political system, Muhammad was always willing to try new ideas. Every Sunday he came to the meeting with a new idea. Let's write a letter to Rouhani. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I admit that I was far more skeptical.
That is a story that I really appreciate because I don't know enough of these private moments with other people, and I like to hear them as much as I can. It's a good story for me to remember. Your Christian Muslim understanding, your work towards that kind of dialogue and respect, which I think is central to your career. In 2019, numbers-wise at least, we see a segment of Lebanon gradually disappearing. And we almost see the defensive reaction today that is the sign of a real minority complex on the defensive. Do you think at its core it's really just a matter of dialogue and discussion and respect and negotiation, or do you think it's really, at the end of the day, it's the politics that will drive one community either to near extinction or to the brink of another round of self-preservation? And you said it earlier, fear, potential violence down the road. Is negotiation and dialogue enough to make sure that Lebanon's Christians feel that they are still part of Lebanon? And this is my generation. It's my kids' generation. They're seeing a very, very, very different country. Not the mosaic that you grew up with, and not the mosaic I grew up with either. I know it's a difficult question.
I know it's very difficult. I try not to be discouraged, but what's happening now is very discouraging. The worst of it is that those who are in power are so short-sighted. They have poisoned relations between Christians and other Lebanese in the name of defending Christian rights or retrieving Christian rights, whatever word they use. They have weakened Lebanon. And then ultimately this will be detrimental to the Christians. I hold them largely responsible for what is happening now to the country. We have, in March 14th, we have overcome, at least symbolically, and we had to build on this, the communal divide in Lebanon. Christians and Muslims met, and there was a sense of identity.
In a way, it's your Shera Azmi, and it's your Ras Beirut that would re-emerge.
That re-emerged, exactly. And we were very hopeful that a new identity that holds people closer to each other and a new sense of being Lebanese is in the making. And And the political elites, they missed this opportunity.
Yeah.
And they're all responsible for missing the opportunity of remaking the unity of the Lebanese people and rebuilding the state.
Yes.
And when I speak of rebuilding the state, I speak of citizenship, of equal citizenship as well.
Yeah.
We miss that opportunity. Responsibility is shared, but those people are even more responsible than everyone else because of not only they did not build on what could have been achieved, but there is a setback.
Yeah.
They have provoked the Sunnis, they have provoked the Shia, they have provoked the Druze. They are playing the zero-sum game. Yeah, they think that what they can gain is nothing but a loss for others.
Yeah.
Rather than say, like, if we build on what unites the Lebanese, and if we reform the political system, as if we try to solve our economic problems, perhaps we can remake the unity of the country. The country is less united than it was ever been.
That's true.
Has ever been, and they're largely responsible for this. I pity that. It's not just. It's more than a blame game I'm playing. That's not what I have in mind. It's not the blame game. It's fear that this resurgence of a fanatic Christian Lebanism, an exclusive Lebanese identity, flavored also with anti-Syrian, anti-Palestinian racism. It's incredible. It will do a lot of harm for the country, but for the Christians as well. It will exacerbate
The decline.
the decline.
Let's end it with a slightly positive note.
Sure.
Slightly. Let's end it with you said off mic a great Kamel Salibi anecdote, and I know this is during the Israeli invasion. This is during the 1980s, bleak time for Lebanon. You're walking with him in Ras Beirut, talking about how Ras Beirut is changing. And what did he tell you in return? What were his words?
Ras Beirut will civilize them.
Maybe we can bet on at least this part of Lebanon, this part of Beirut, holding on to what your generation loved about AUB and its campus, its neighborhood, what my generation still holds dearly, the equal among equals, this sense of everyone belongs to this part of Lebanon. And this can accommodate all Lebanese from all types. So hopefully AUB at least, and Ras Beirut, figuratively and in what you hold dearly as well, your childhood, your later career, your whole Christian Muslim understanding and all of that. Hopefully this corner of the Middle East retains it for the time being.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Tarek Mitri.
Thank you, Ronnie.
I really appreciate this. Career and a deep appreciation for the religious differences of this country, for genuine attempts at understanding and dialogue, for the political, historic context that gave Lebanon its power-sharing mechanism, ways to fix it, ways to improve it, the subtext of what is being discussed right now on the streets of Beirut. And today is day 15 of the uprising. And even though the protests have diminished, there is political change on the horizon. And we saw it last night. 24 hours after the Prime Minister's announced resignation, you still have people going to the streets, blocking roads, demanding other people resign, demanding the state in itself, the state that we know, change. So this will not end anytime soon. Hopefully that emotional upswell will yield to change this time around. If you want to stay updated, simply subscribe to this podcast through your preferred podcast platform, or go to our YouTube channel, the Beirut Banyan. You'll find us there. Until next time, I'm Rani Shatah, and this is the Beirut Banyan.